On this episode of Behind the Wheel, 10 years with my Corvette, what I learned, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm making this video today because I just want to help you guys that are Corvette owners. I've had this car, like I said, for 10 years, so there's something I can pass along, things that I've tried, things that have worked, maintenance issues, things like that. I want to be able to help. Or people that are looking to buy a Corvette, hopefully this will be a value of what to look for when you're looking for a good used car. So some of the things I want to talk about today is the first time on the track, what happened. I had some issues I'll tell you about, the modifications I've done to the engine, the suspension, and some of the must-have things that I've bought for this car over time that I think are worth every penny. So, like the first time on the track, here are a few things that I noticed that were kind of weaknesses with the car. So first of all, I bought this car from the original owner. It's not a Z51 car, so it doesn't have some of the extra features a Z51 has. First thing I noticed, and you got to be aware of when you go on the track, is tire pressure. If you show up on the track like I did with your normal 32 pounds of pressure and go on the track, your tires will build an additional 4, 5, 6, or 7 pounds of pressure when you go out there. So be smart, take out 5 or 6 pounds, cruise around for a few laps, and it's going to make your life much better. I actually had a high tire pressure warning come on, and my car started sliding all over the track like it was on ice. So take it from me, that's one of the things you need to do. Another to be aware of is brakes and brake fluid. The original brakes that come on these things, they're okay and the brake pads are okay, but when you start getting into pressure situations where you're at high speeds, 100 miles an hour or more and jumping on the brakes, you tend to cook. Not only the brake pads, but the brake fluid itself. So one thing to do, not that big of a deal, just order a new set of brake pads. I use Hawk like an HP Plus. It's a great pad and it makes a big difference as far as preventing brake fade. Brake fluid. Just get one of your friends to go and jack your car up, bleed the brakes, have somebody pour the fluid in, just use like a high temperature brake fluid like I use. Makes a world of difference when keeping that brake pedal from getting all spongy. And last but not least, power steering. If you have a base car like me and don't have a Z51, which has a power steering cooler, the power steering fluid from all the action tends to overheat, and you'll notice that because it'll almost be bubbling out of the reservoir like it was for my car. A simple fix, get some sort of device to suck the fluid out, put high temperature power steering fluid back in, you're back in business. So, tires, brakes, power steering fluid, grab a helmet and hit the track. Okay, maintenance. Here are a few things to watch out for on these cars. And these cars overall are pretty reliable, but there's a few things you need to keep an eye out for. One is the radiator. The car is super aerodynamic and has a very slanted radiator and an opening in the front. And what that does is it sucks in every bit of crap on the road, leaves and debris. So get in there once in a while, get a shop vac, suck it out, get a blower, but try not to blow everything up in there and try to clean that out once in a while to help keep the car cool. Another, and you've probably seen Facebook posts about this, for you guys that own these cars now or looking, keep an eye on the harmonic balancer. That's what keeps the motor balanced to the crankshaft, and after a while in some of these cars they tend to get loose and wobble, and not only is that an issue, but it could create a problem as far as serious engine damage, having that thing get out of balance. So keep an eye out for that. Lastly, these cars, if you don't drive them all the time, this is not a daily driver for me, you've got to put a battery tender on it. The batteries go dead. If I don't drive this thing for a week or two, sure enough, it might start and it'll leave me stranded somewhere. So get yourself a battery tender online. You get one from Harbor Freight for $7 or $8. Keep it plugged in and it will make a world of difference. So keep an eye on that radiator. Check that balance every once in a while to make sure it looks good and put a tender on that battery and you should be good to go. Okay, engine mods. Here's what I've done and let me tell you how it worked. I changed the intake manifold, went to the fast 102. That might have been a little bit larger for LS2 because I maybe should have gone with the 92, but that's what I've done here. Put in a Callaway cold air intake. I think it's called a Callaway honker. Also changed the cam with the Texas Speed cam, which really made a big difference. Kind of pushed the power up the RPM scale a little bit, but made a big difference. And I went with American Racing headers. Definitely there's cheaper ones out there, but these are fantastic, really well made, 3/8" flange, fantastic. So it's been wonderful. I actually had a friend of mine install this originally, started having problems with detonation, and I came to find out most people install these intake manifolds wrong, and they almost have to be glued down, and these bolts tend to work themselves loose. So if you did change to an aftermarket intake, check it out once in a while. I think it's supposed to be 8 or 9 foot-pounds, and then check these bolts and retorque them every once in a while, because if not, the car's going to run lean and you're going to have problems in terms of detonation. But I got to say, overall, This cost me quite a chunk of change to do all this. Made a big difference in sound, made a huge difference in performance and power. Of course, there's an issue with smog, so that presents a problem for some people in some states. But overall, I think it was a great mod. So if you want to do it, I highly recommend it. Okay, we covered engine mods. Let's talk about the suspension, what I've done to this. I've done a lot. One of the biggest things I've done, and one of the best things that we'll cover at the end, is coilovers. I got rid of the original leaf springs that came on this car and went with coilovers. I went with LG Motorsports. They're about $2,000 a set. Made a huge difference in how the car, not only can you adjust the ride and how it feels, but when it comes to slalom and autocross, things like that, makes it much more stable. Sway bars. I've gone through like 3 sets of sway bars in the front and rear. At this time I have a Sam Strano sway bar in the rear, and it's fully adjustable, and those make a big difference as far as how the car handles, and also giving you some adjustability because everybody wants their car a little bit different. Also changed the rotors on these. I know we talked about the pads earlier, but I went to a Z51 rotor, which is a little bit larger, as well as changing out my composition on the brake pads as well. Tires and wheels. These things come with an 8.5-inch front as far as width, and a 10-inch rear. I went to a 9-inch front and a 10.5-inch rear because I'm going from, let's say, a 245 tire in the front to a 275. That's a big difference. When you're getting into things as far as performance, maximum grip, autocross, that makes a big difference. Here's one thing I got to warn you about. I have a lot of people that race these things or race like a C5, and they go what's called squares. 18-inch wheels, and they're 10.5-inch wide, and I was trying to run 315s all the way around. That presented a couple of problems with this car. One, on this car, since it's not a Z06, there wasn't really enough room for the width on the front. It was really close. The people that installed it said if I go over a bump, it's probably going to break the fender. Two, these cars need a taller tire in the back, as far as diameter, than the front. If it doesn't have that, it thinks there's a problem with the ABS, and the computer can throw you massive problems and codes like mine did. So I bought this set of wheels and tires. It was $2,500, had to sell them at a loss and go back to putting tires on these wheels. So be careful with those kind of changes. If you have questions and comments, hit me up. I'm happy to answer. All right, let's talk about the 3 best mods that I've done so far, just kind of general. One is the shifter. The shifter that comes in these, the original one, is not real great. If you try to shift fast at all, it doesn't want to go. And so I did some research, and I got an MGW Shifter. It's not super expensive. It's about $300 and change. Very easy to install. Take out the center console. Makes a big difference. It's got a very precise feel. The gears are very close together. You don't miss a gear, and if you want to shift it fast, you can. The other thing I've done that I really like, not a big deal, super expensive, change the stock stereo. The stock stereos aren't that great. It doesn't have a lot of functionality in terms of Bluetooth or navigation. So they make plenty of install kits so you can put an aftermarket stereo in. The stereo itself might be $100 to $1,000 depending on what you get. But now I have Bluetooth, I have Apple CarPlay, makes a huge difference. And then lastly, one of the best kind of general mods that I've made is the cam. I mean, sure, it makes some problems with smog and so forth, but man, for the sound, for the rumble, for the power, you can't beat it. So those are 3 things I definitely recommend checking into. All right, we talked about the general mods, I think, that were the best ones I've done so far. If you're going to track your car or autocross your car, the best mods that I've done, and I've done all kinds, one of those coilovers. Huge difference, especially when it comes to autocross. The other thing, if you're going to track your car, get yourself an aftermarket seat. This is a Corvette seat. With the seat and bracket, it's probably $500. Not terribly expensive. It's called the FX1 Pro. It's a fixed back seat. Provides so much more support than a stock seat. And then I just went with an aftermarket harness. But I'm telling you, if you're going to track your car, those coilovers, man, what a difference. And if you want to be held in that car because it's going to start handling better and be able to corner better, get yourself an aftermarket seat and harness. I'm telling you, you won't regret it. I hope everybody watching got something out of this today. Like I said, I've had this car for nearly 10 years, spent a lot of money on it, modifying things that worked, things that didn't, and I'm hoping that some of what I shared helps you guys in the future, or maybe avoid some of the mistakes that I made. So if you liked the video, tell me you liked it. If you have comments or questions, hit me up. If there's things you want to see in the future or questions about some of the things I shared, let me know. And most of all, if you'd subscribe to my channel, I'd sure appreciate it. That gives me the ability to go and keep making more of these videos for you. And just so you know, for every person that subscribes, I'm going to make a donation to the Wounded Warriors. So thank you for your support. I'm going to keep trying to put out some videos, and I'll see you on the next one.